You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I've never been the jealous type. Suspicious maybe when something doesn't line up, but jealous? No. Ivy always said that was one of the things she loved about me. That I trusted her completely. That I wasn't clingy. Maybe that should have been my first clue. The day she came back from Austin, everything seemed normal on the surface. She texted that morning saying her flight had landed early. I offered to pick her up from the airport like I usually did, but she told me not to worry, she'd already grabbed a lift. Said she wanted to stop by a cafe near her office to pick up something for her assistant. I thought nothing of it. Ivy had always been thoughtful like that. By the time she walked through the door that evening, I was finishing dinner, a lazy pasta dish with garlic bread from the freezer. I remember the way she paused when she stepped inside, like she was checking to see what version of me she'd be coming home to. My version was always the same, loyal, predictable, and happy to see her. "Hey," she said, dropping her suitcase just inside the door with a tired little smile. But it was the smell that got me before anything else. Not the scent of travel, not the stale airplane funk or the lavender dry shampoo she always used on trips. This was something else. A thick, sweet perfume I didn't recognize, too heavy, almost cloying, like it didn't belong on her skin. I stepped closer to hug her and it hit me stronger. My mind registered it before my nose did. It wasn't hers. Ivy had worn the same scent for the last 5 years, light, citrusy, and subtle. This wasn't that. This was designer, sharp, floral, and loud in a way Ivy had never been. I said nothing. Just hugged her a little tighter than usual. "I missed you," she mumbled into my neck. I wanted to believe it. But then I helped her carry her suitcase upstairs, and that's when I saw it. A faint smear of dark red lipstick on the inside of the main zipper. It was so subtle it almost looked like a shadow. But I knew what I was seeing. It was too deliberate to be an accident. Ivy didn't wear colors like that. She avoided bold anything when she traveled, no heavy makeup, no flashy clothes, no bright nails. That was just her. She called it business neutral. So where had this deep, wine-red stain come from? I closed the suitcase slowly and carried it into the bedroom. I watched her move around the room with a strange kind of energy, rushed, distracted, like she was trying to avoid eye contact. She dropped her carry-on next to the dresser and didn't even take her coat off. Her phone was already in her hand, screen tilted away from me. I saw the screen light up with a message, but she swiped it away so fast I couldn't catch the name. "How was the trip?" I asked casually, sitting on the edge of the bed, arms crossed, pretending like I hadn't noticed anything. "Everything go all right at the conference?" She said, distracted, already stepping into the master bathroom. "Same old. Lots of panels. Long hours." Then, and this part still plays in my head like a movie I didn't ask to star in, she locked the bathroom door. She never did that. Not unless she was doing something that required privacy, and even then, the lock was optional. I heard the fan switch on, followed by the shower, though I didn't hear the sound of water hitting the tile, just the occasional shuffle of her feet and the murmur of her voice. She was on the phone. I couldn't hear everything, but every so often I caught something through the fan hum, a short laugh, a nervous sigh, the kind of voice you use when you're trying to calm someone down or be careful not to be overheard. I sat there staring at the closed door. My brain tried to come up with reasonable explanations. Maybe a friend. Maybe something from work. Maybe she just needed to decompress. But my stomach, that gut feeling you try to drown with logic, was already doing somersaults. When she came out 20 minutes later, her hair was still dry. I didn't say anything. She tossed her phone on the nightstand face down and changed into pajamas without a word, like nothing was wrong. But there was a tension in the room I couldn't name. The kind you feel in your throat. The kind that makes you choose your next words very, very carefully. "You okay?" I asked finally, watching her from the bed. She paused, looking at me like I was the one acting strange. "Yeah. Just tired. That trip wore me out." I nodded slowly. "You smell different." She blinked. "What?" I noticed your perfume is different. It's nice, just not the usual." She smiled too quickly. "Oh, that?" The hotel gave out samples. I tried one. Didn't like it. She walked into the closet before I could say anything else. "I need to do laundry tomorrow. My stuff smells like airport." It was the way she said that last part almost too quickly, like it had been rehearsed. That night, she fell asleep almost instantly. Or at least, she pretended to. I lay there next to her, eyes open, listening to her breath, trying to decide if it was deep enough to be real sleep or if she was just waiting for me to give in. I kept replaying everything in my head. The perfume. The locked door. The lipstick. Her story had too many seams. And what really got me wasn't just the evidence, it was how calm she was. How practiced. Like she'd done this dance before. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee. She kissed me on the cheek. She scrolled through her phone in silence, thumb moving fast over the screen. When I looked over, she tilted it slightly away without even thinking about it. Something in me started to break, but quietly. Not all at once. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask about the lipstick. I didn't mention the scent again. I wasn't ready, not because I didn't want the truth, but because I already knew it. And knowing something is different from being ready to live with it. I think that's what betrayal really is. It's not the big, explosive moment. It's not screaming or slam doors. It's that slow erosion, the realization that someone you trusted has quietly chosen someone else over and over again, even while smiling at you from across the dinner table. In hindsight, I think that was the night I stopped trusting her. Not officially, there was no declaration, no line in the sand, but emotionally. I stopped leaning into our conversations. I stopped holding her gaze. I stopped imagining a future with her. It was like part of me quietly walked out the door, leaving the rest behind to play house a little longer. Maybe I was hoping she'd prove me wrong. But deep down, I knew that moment in the bathroom, with the door locked and the fake shower and her voice echoing through steam that didn't exist, that was the beginning of the end. Looking back, I realized the scent on her suitcase wasn't the beginning, it was just the moment I stopped lying to myself. The signs had been there for months, lined up like mile markers I sped past with blinders on. It's almost embarrassing now how hard I worked to explain them away. But when you love someone, really love them, your brain starts editing reality in real time. You focus on what you hope is true instead of what's right in front of you. Ivy started changing about 5 months before the Austin trip. It was subtle at first. Less texting during the day, fewer goodnight kisses, the small things that usually hold a relationship together like threads and fabric. I'd get home from work and find her already in bed, scrolling through her phone with that blank look on her face, the kind you wear when your mind is somewhere else. I'd ask how her day was and get a shrug or a generic busy. The first time I noticed something concrete was a Friday evening in early spring. We had dinner plans, nothing fancy, just our usual neighborhood spot, but she texted me last minute saying she had to stay late for a client pitch review. That wasn't out of the ordinary. Her job in corporate strategy was demanding, and Ivy was always the kind of person who volunteered for extra work. What struck me as strange was what happened after. She came home at midnight. Not late midnight. Her heels echoed in the hallway and I could smell alcohol before I saw her. I asked her how the pitch went and she laughed a little too loudly. What pitch, she said, slipping off her heels. Oh, that. It was fine. We went out after. With who? I asked. She looked at me, blinked once like she hadn't expected the question. Just people from work. No names. No details. Just people. Then she headed straight to the bathroom and shut the door. That was the first night I slept on the couch. Not because we were fighting, we weren't. Not outwardly. But because I felt something I couldn't name, a kind of hollow settling between us that didn't go away. After that, it became a pattern. Unreachable at odd hours. Vague stories about work events I wasn't invited to. The kind of cold affection that felt more like obligation than love. She stopped asking me to join her at professional mixers or weekend retreats. Said they were small invites only, or client-facing, or super last-minute. It was always something. I remember one weekend in particular. Ivy said she had a networking brunch on Sunday morning. I offered to drive her, just to be nice. She **t it down immediately. No, she said, waving me off. It's just a bunch of girls talking shop. You'd be bored out of your mind. She wore a black wrap dress I hadn't seen before, low-cut with gold earrings she used to save for date nights. I didn't say anything. Just smiled and told her to have a good time. She was gone for 6 hours. When she got home, she claimed they'd gone shopping afterward. I asked what she bought. Just browsed, she said, heading upstairs. I went through the trunk of her car later that night. Empty. Another time, I walked into the kitchen late at night and saw her phone light up on the counter. It was face down, but the screen glowed through the case. She snatched it up before I could get a glimpse, held it close like it was a secret she hadn't decided whether to keep or erase. Who's texting this late? I asked, pretending to make a sandwich I didn't want. She didn't look up. Just work. I didn't believe her, and I think she knew that. But we both pretended like we didn't. I wasn't innocent in all of this. I let it happen. I played the role of the supportive husband. I didn't ask too many questions. I gave her space because I thought that's what love looked like, trusting someone even when it hurt to. Ivy started going to the gym again. That was new. Not that she needed it, she always looked amazing, but she suddenly got really serious about wellness. She downloaded a fitness app and signed up for boxing classes at a boutique studio halfway across town. I offered to go with her once, half joking, and she shut it down fast. "It's my thing," she said. "Let me have one thing." Fair enough. But it wasn't just the gym. It was the wardrobe. The new bras in the laundry I hadn't seen before. The scented lotion that smelled nothing like her. A playlist on our shared Spotify labeled Reset. I played it one day while she was gone. It was all soft indie songs about self-discovery and heartbreak. I didn't know what to make of that. Then there were the weekends, the slow, quiet erosion of time spent together. We used to go hiking or make pancakes or binge-watch whatever show we were both pretending not to like. But that changed. Saturdays were for errands, Sundays became reset days, and at some point our routines stopped overlapping. We still slept in the same bed, but it didn't feel like it. Her social media changed too. I didn't notice right away because Ivy was never a big poster, but over time her tone shifted. Her captions got cryptic. Things like "finding my way back to myself" or "growth doesn't always look like peace." Pictures of landscapes, coffee shops, hotel lobbies, always alone. She never tagged me in anything anymore. Never mentioned me at all. At first, I tried to explain it away. I told myself she was stressed. That maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention. That maybe I was the one who had changed. But that only lasted so long. There was one night I won't forget, a Thursday. I came home early, surprise pizza in hand, figuring we could eat on the couch like we used to. I walked in and found her standing in the living room, mid-conversation on her phone. She didn't hear me come in. Her voice was low, soft, affectionate. I only caught one sentence: "Yeah, I miss you too." She turned around and froze when she saw me. Ended the call in a heartbeat. "Hey," she said, eyes wide. "You're home early." She smiled. That same smile she used when she needed to disarm me. But it didn't land. Not this time. I handed her the pizza box, kissed her on the cheek, and said nothing. Later that night, when she went to sleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the back of her head. I didn't touch her. Didn't reach for her. I just watched her breathing and tried to figure out if she was still the same person. I don't think she was. I think the woman I married was already gone. I just hadn't caught up yet. It wasn't until Ivy's trip to Chicago that everything truly unraveled. I had my suspicions long before then. Every instinct I had told me something was wrong, but suspicion is slippery. It makes you second-guess your own mind. For months, I walked around like a man holding a glass full of water, careful not to spill, afraid to tip it one way or the other. But that weekend, Ivy didn't just tip the glass, she poured it out herself. She said it was a leadership summit for women in finance. 3 days, fully sponsored, with speakers and roundtables and a fancy black-tie dinner on the final night. It sounded legit. She forwarded me the agenda, even showed me the email confirmation. I nodded through it all, told her to have a great time, kissed her goodbye at the door, and told myself to let it go. But letting go isn't the same as not looking. And I was done pretending not to look. I didn't start digging with any grand plan. That Friday night, I sat alone on the couch, the TV playing some crime drama I wasn't really watching. I was trying not to stare at the empty spot beside me where Ivy usually sat, legs folded under her, a blanket half draped over both of us. Instead, there was just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ache of absence. At some point, I remembered that we still had the cloud backup system connected to her old laptop. It was mostly a formality, something I'd set up years ago when we both worked from home during the early pandemic. We hadn't used it much since, but it still synced with any new files she uploaded to the cloud. Out of boredom, I opened the dashboard. Just to see. And there it was. A folder that hadn't been there before. Created that afternoon. Titled with a man's first name I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long time. Just his name. No last name, no label. It wasn't work-related. It wasn't personal documents or taxes or anything that belonged in a professional summit. Just a name. A man's name. I clicked it. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. *TS. Screen recordings. Messages saved as PDFs, videos. The first image was of Ivy sitting on a bed in a hotel room I didn't recognize. She was smiling in that way she used to smile at me when things were new. Her hair was down, makeup still fresh, a champagne glass in one hand. The photo had been taken by someone else. The next few images made it obvious who. There was a man, tall, bearded, well-dressed, with the kind of effortless confidence that gets under your skin. In one video, they were having a video call. He called her baby. She laughed and told him she couldn't wait for Chicago. The messages that followed were long, in asterisk mate. Plans. Jokes. Inside references. And not a single mention of me. I wasn't a character in their story. I was a footnote. A problem to be managed. One message from Ivy said, "He's still completely clueless. I hate how easy it is." Another, "We'll have all the time we need next weekend." I told him it's a summit. He won't question it. I stared at that sentence for what felt like an hour. I kept reading, kept watching, even though every image, every message carved something out of me. I couldn't stop. Couldn't look away. I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside, like some bad TV plot where the faithful husband uncovers the truth through digital breadcrumbs. Only this wasn't a show. It was my wife. My marriage. My reality. By the end, there was no doubt. This wasn't emotional infidelity or some passing flirtation. This was a full-blown relationship. One with history, routine, and intention. She wasn't just cheating. She had built a parallel life. And the worst part? She had saved it. Documented it. Preserved it like a keepsake. I shut the laptop slowly, hands trembling. My mouth was dry, my chest tight like my ribs had turned to concrete. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the backsplash like it held answers. It didn't. There was no confrontation that night. No phone call. No dramatic messages. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't scream or cry or throw things. I just stood there, trying to breathe. I don't know how long I stayed up, but the sky was already turning gray by the time I crawled into bed. The side she slept on was cold. Empty. I wrapped myself in a blanket that still smelled faintly like her and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally dragged me under. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that only comes after everything breaks. I made coffee. I took a shower. I sat at the dining table and started writing things down, notes, dates, screensh asterisk ts. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even planning confrontation. I just needed to understand it all. I needed to build a timeline like a detective putting together the last days of someone who vanished. Because that's what it felt like. Ivy had vanished. The woman I knew, the woman I married, built a life with, celebrated birthdays and fought over closet space with, that woman had left months ago. In her place was someone who looked like her, spoke like her, wore her perfume and smiled the same way. But underneath? A stranger. I didn't cry. Not then. But I felt hollow in a way I'd never felt before. I spent most of that weekend preparing quietly. Gathering financial records, backing up emails, organizing documents. I copied the folder onto a flash drive and locked it in my desk drawer. I opened a new bank account. Booked a meeting with a lawyer I'd found weeks earlier but never had the nerve to call. It all felt distant, like I was helping someone else pack up their life. When Ivy came home on Sunday evening, I was sitting on the porch pretending to read. She kissed me on the cheek and smiled. Flight was delayed. "I'm exhausted," she said, wheeling her suitcase inside. "Missed you." I nodded. "Welcome back." She didn't ask what I did all weekend. She didn't notice the distance in my voice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. That night, she curled up beside me like nothing had changed. Like we were still us. I lay still, pretending to sleep, listening to her breathing. And I knew that was the last time I'd ever see her the same way again. The marriage had already ended. The rest was just paperwork. 3 days after Ivy returned from Chicago, her father died. It was sudden. A stroke, they said. 1 minute he was at a board meeting, the next he was gone. I got the call from Ivy while I was driving home from work. Her voice was tight, raw, the kind of pain that isn't performative. It was the first time in months I'd heard her cry in a way that felt unguarded. I didn't know what to say. I hated her for what she'd done. For who she had become. But grief doesn't play by clean rules. And as much as I wanted to keep my distance, some old instinct in me, husband, protector, maybe just human, kicked in. I told her I'd meet her at her parents' house. Her father, Richard Caldwell, was a towering figure in the financial world. Ivy used to joke that he didn't walk into rooms, he entered them like a headline. A man who built empires from spreadsheets and charisma. He was the kind of guy people whispered about at fundraising galas, the kind who smiled with his mouth but calculated with his eyes. We were never close. He respected me, or at least respected that I made Ivy happy once upon a time. But there was always a wall between us. A quiet tension that hovered during dinners and holiday weekends. He never said it outright, but I knew he thought she married beneath her station. I wasn't legacy. I wasn't money. Still, we found an uneasy peace. Especially in the last year or two. In fact, the last time we spoke one-on-one, it caught me off guard. It was 4 months before he passed. He called and asked if we could meet for lunch. Just the two of us. I thought it was odd, but I said yes. When Richard Caldwell summons you, you don't say no. We met at some private downtown club, the kind with monogrammed napkins and walls full of oil paintings. He asked about work, about the house, about Ivy. I told him everything was fine, of course. You don't show weakness to a man like that. He watched me over the rim of his scotch glass for a long moment and said nothing. Then he leaned in. She's not the same lately, he said. Not a question. A fact. You've noticed it too. I blinked. She's been busy. Work's been He held up a hand. Spare me the deflection. You're smart enough to know when something's rotting underneath the surface. I know my daughter. And I know what she looks like when she's slipping. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He stared out the window for a while as if watching some memory pass by on the street. I've made arrangements, he said finally. What kind of arrangements? I asked. He turned back to me, eyes hard. The kind you make when you don't trust what's coming next. I didn't press. He didn't elaborate. But I felt it in my chest, something big was shifting. Something I wasn't meant to understand just yet. Now, months later, I was sitting in Ivy's childhood home, watching her crumble under the weight of her grief. She sat curled on the couch, surrounded by friends and cousins and half-whispered condolences. I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, invisible. Ivy's mother was composed as always. She nodded at me when I arrived, then immediately turned back to the conversation she was having with the estate lawyer. The funeral was as grand as expected. Held at a marble-clad cathedral downtown, attended by every investor, CEO, and political hanger-on within a 100-mile radius. Ivy wore black like it was armor, fitted, flawless, ice-cold composure broken only by carefully timed tears. I stood beside her, saying little, letting the world see us together one last time. That night, after the reception, we sat in the same car, in the same driveway, in total silence. The air between us was thick, choking. Then she said it. I think we should separate. No hesitation. No apology. Just clean, practiced words. I turned toward her. She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead at the garage door like it had an answer she couldn't find. Now? I said. You want to talk about this now? I can't keep pretending, she said. We've been distant for months. It's not working anymore. I studied her face. Not a hint of guilt. Not even sadness. Just exhaustion. Like she was finally dropping a weight she'd carried too long. You're right, I said. It's not working. She finally looked at me. Then we agree. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know that her father had already made his move. A week later, the will was set to be read. The estate lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine, scheduled the meeting at Richard's law firm. It was private. Just family and legal reps. Ivy was relaxed when we walked in, like someone stepping into their rightful throne. She believed she was about to inherit everything. And at first, she was right. The opening clauses confirmed the obvious. Ivy was the sole beneficiary of the Caldwell estate. Stocks, properties, offshore accounts, art collections, all of it bundled into a private trust under her name. She skimmed through the first few pages like someone skimming a restaurant menu. Nodded along, smiled faintly. Then Catherine flipped to the final page. There is one additional clause, she said. The room got quiet. Ivy leaned forward, interested. Catherine continued. In the event that Ivy Caldwell voluntarily initiates a legal separation or divorce from her spouse, or if credible documentation of marital infidelity is produced, control of the Caldwell family trust shall be transferred temporarily to the named fiduciary, Marcus R. Langston. It took a second for the words to register. I felt Ivy freeze beside me. Her smile faltered. Her eyes darted from Catherine to me and back again. I'm sorry, what is she asked, her voice thinner now. Catherine repeated it calmly, like reading off a grocery list. Control of the trust will shift to your husband for a term of 24 months, extendable upon court approval in the event of either infidelity or divorce initiated by you. Ivy blinked. That can't be right. It's signed, notarized, witnessed. And there is also a video statement from Mr. Caldwell on file confirming intent, Catherine replied. Play it, Ivy snapped. And so they did. The room dimmed. A projector screen rolled down. And there he was, Richard Caldwell, filmed months before his death, seated behind a desk in a crisp navy suit, looking every inch the kingmaker he always was. If you're watching this, he said, voice steady, I'm no longer around to make these choices myself. But I've seen the cracks forming. And I won't let my legacy become collateral damage in the games of emotion and ego. Marcus, if you're still married to Ivy and she's chosen to walk away, or if she's betrayed the vows she made to you, this trust is yours to safeguard. You may not be a Caldwell by name, but I trust you to protect what she won't. The video ended. Silence. Ivy looked shell-shocked. Her mouth opened and closed. No words. You knew, she whispered, finally turning to me. You talked to him. I met her eyes. Yeah, I did. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Like she hadn't expected this. Like for once, I wasn't the one being caught off guard. She stood abruptly, muttered something about needing air, and left the room. I didn't follow her. I just sat there, hands folded, watching the dust settle. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. For the first time, the story was changing. There are moments when time doesn't feel real. It stretches, contracts, bends in ways that make it hard to tell how long you've been sitting in the same chair, breathing the same air. That's what the room felt like after the video stopped playing. Ivy's father's voice still echoed in my ears even after the screen went black. This trust is yours to safeguard. Ivy had stormed out a few minutes earlier, her heels clapping angrily across the marble tile of the hallway. Everyone else, the attorneys, the assistants, even the notary, stayed frozen like they were waiting for permission to breathe again. Catherine, the lawyer handling the estate, finally broke the silence. Well, she said, smoothing her notes with clinical calm. That concludes the reading. If there are any questions, I can answer them individually. I didn't have any questions. I already knew the answers. Ivy had always believed the money was hers. That was never in doubt. She'd been raised in rooms with oil paintings on the walls and private chefs who knew her birthday cake preference by heart. Wealth was background noise to her. She never flaunted it, not in an obnoxious way, but it was baked into her. It gave her that weightless confidence, that way of moving through the world like nothing could ever truly touch her. And now, for the first time in her life, something had touched her. Hard. I stayed behind after the room cleared out, letting everyone else shuffle their shock into the hallway. I wasn't in a rush. I knew Ivy wasn't far, she never was when things didn't go according to plan. Catherine gave me a tight smile, handed me a sealed envelope marked with the trust documents, and nodded once. She'll fight this, she said quietly, almost like a warning. Let her, I replied. I found Ivy sitting in the glass-walled atrium of the building, staring out over a courtyard that was all manicured hedges and stone fountains. Her blazer was draped over the armrest beside her, hair pulled loose, eyes vacant. She didn't look up when I approached. You knew, she said softly, bitterness bleeding through the calm. I did. How long? Since that lunch he invited me to. 4 months ago. She shook her head slowly, the way someone does when they're trying to reset reality. He hated you. No, I said. He watched you. That landed. I saw it in the way her jaw clenched, the slight movement in her throat as she swallowed whatever rage was building. You think this is fair? She said, finally turning toward me. You think you deserve control of his estate? You didn't build any of it. You didn't earn it. No, I agreed. But I also didn't betray my vows. She flinched. Just for a second. Then her mask slipped back on. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim, Marcus. You've been distant for months. Checked out. You think I didn't feel that? I was distant, I said, voice level. After I realized you were already gone. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, the one with every message, video, photo, and file from that hidden folder she forgot to disconnect from the cloud. I held it out to her. You want to talk about fairness? You want to talk about who walked away first? She stared at it like it was a bomb. I don't want to play this game, she muttered. That's the difference between us, Ivy, I said, setting the drive gently on the table. You played a game. I lived a marriage. Her eyes glistened. Whether it was fury or guilt or both, I couldn't tell. Maybe even she didn't know. Do you have any idea what this looks like? She asked, her voice rising. Do you understand what people are going to say? My father put you in charge of the Caldwell Trust. My friends, the firm, the board, they're going to think. They're going to think what the documents say, I cut in. That your father had concerns. That he put a safeguard in place. That his daughter, for all her charm and ambition, made decisions that cost her something. I didn't lose everything, she snapped. No, I said. Just the illusion of control. She stood, pacing a few steps before turning back to face me. Her voice dropped an octave slower, more deliberate. You think you're going to keep this? You think I'm going to sit back and let you run my family's legacy? I'm not running anything, I said. I'm holding it, just like he asked. She scoffed. Temporary custodianship. 2 years. Then I get it back. Unless the court decides otherwise, I said, pulling a second envelope from my coat pocket and placing it beside the flash drive. There's more. He filed for an extension clause. Said if there was evidence of attempts to defraud, conceal, or manipulate the estate, the timeline extends. Her eyes narrowed. And you plan to file that, she said, already knowing the answer. I nodded. I will. Because you didn't just cheat, Ivy. You lied to me. You moved money. You tried to quietly separate our finances before telling me. You filed travel reimbursements to shell accounts. I've got everything, receipts, transfers, emails. She went silent. That was the worst part. Not the yelling, not the accusations. The silence. That meant she knew. She knew it was true. She knew there was no defense left. When she finally spoke again, her voice was brittle. You've been building this case. For months. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She sat back down, staring at the floor now. For the first time in years, she looked small. I waited a moment, then turned to leave. At the door, I paused. None of this had to happen, I said quietly. You could have been honest. You could have asked for a separation. You could have left with dignity. She didn't respond, so I walked out. By the time I stepped into the hallway, my phone was already buzzing. A call from my attorney, another from the bank managing the trust. The media had caught wind of the estate's reading, and people were already asking questions. I wasn't ready for the spotlight. I didn't want it, but I knew I had to walk this path carefully, not for revenge, not to hurt Ivy, but because her father had trusted me with something he clearly didn't trust her with anymore. The next few days moved fast. Ivy's team tried to contest the clause. Legal threats were issued. A PR firm quietly suggested I remain out of view until things settled. But the paperwork was ironclad. Her father had done everything by the book. Notarized, witnessed, digitally timestamped. There was no way around it. The court upheld the clause. Ivy's claim to immediate control was denied. The Caldwell Trust, all $250 million of it, was officially under my management. And Ivy? She was left with a new reality. Not broken, not penniless, but no longer untouchable. No longer protected by the shell of legacy and inheritance. Her father had left her an empire, but he gave me the key.